Welcome back, Safehouse family.
Welcome back.
We're back once again.
Yes, we are. Quicker than we were the last time. Yay.
Right. We got a nice cadence going on.
Yes, we do.
Nice cadence going on.
Yes.
Getting content out there. Just want to send a big thank you to everybody that watched and commented and or shared information with us offline about our last video about boundaries. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Ring the bell so that you can get alerted to content as we publish it. Just make sure you ring the bell.
I always want to laugh.
And I know you want to sing a song
I'm not
too.
going to sing. I'm not going to sing. I'm not going to say I'm not going to sing throughout the video. I'm just not going to sing a song about a bell.
Okay, no singing, no song about a bell. Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
That's all.
Yeah, but we got some feedback around just the word boundaries, and it created. It's good because the word boundaries in and of itself creates some emotion.
It does. Some people were kind of put off by that word. I don't think the singles were necessarily put off because singles are okay with having boundaries, and they understand that they can't give a person free access and total access to themselves during the dating process, and they understand that even when you start to get closer, that it's still a process. I think it was probably that word probably seemed a little bit more harsh for people who were married, because once again, like you said, when you get married, you feel like, hey, we're married and we're one. Mm-hmm. I think we forget the word becoming.
Yeah, right. Right.
And so I think if married couples look at it from the space of we're becoming, then what you begin to realize is that when that you still have boundaries, and what you're trying to figure out is how to loosen your own, and even how to create new ones, because you still have to create boundaries when you're becoming.
And I also, the becoming thing is big because, once again, we're going down this process. But even me, I'm very big on words, nouns, verbs, linguistics, right? I really am big on the meaning of words. Mm-hmm. And once again, like we defined, a boundary is just something that prevents either logical or physical, real or imaginary, something that prevents something from getting from one place to another. Mm-hmm. What I found is that word invokes emotion in people, that somehow boundaries, and I know for some the word boundaries, especially in a social media context, boundaries can kind of imply canceling. So I put a boundary up to cancel you. I even use the word with some people, bury. We like to use the word boundary as a substitution for the word burying someone. Yeah. And that's not what we're advocating. We're not advocating that you use boundaries as a tool to sort of block, things out. It's more in terms of, even in marriage, especially in marriage, because obviously when you're single, you do use boundaries to kind of keep certain things from accessing certain things. But when you're married, there's certain boundaries that you just have to adhere to. Just think about it professionally. Those of you that may be in ministry or in the medical field, you don't go home and you don't tell your wife or your significant other about the medical issues. Yeah. You don't tell about the ministry issues. You don't tell about the person that's on some sort of substance or dealing with some sort of issue. So you maintain a boundary of confidentiality even with your spouse around those things. You don't go home and discuss your passwords for work at the job. So those are boundaries. And we just want to look at boundaries for the raw sense of the word. Now, not how it's applied. Right. Because I agree. Applying boundaries in the wrong context can break the sense of oneness. That's true. Right? Because we're not trying to, a toxic boundary. My money is my money and your money is your money, and you won't have access to my accounts and all those kind of things. Yeah. That's a toxic boundary because in a sense of oneness, we're not working together. But if I have to, as a minister, maintain confidentiality about someone that confessed a potential drug habit to me or infidelity with their spouse or whatever have you, I have to maintain that confidentiality until it's appropriate time to disclose. Mm-hmm. So I just want to, I hope out there that you all are listening to, there's the emotion, there's the feel around it, but then there's the actual definition. I don't want us to get caught up so much in the emotions that it invokes in us, because that's another series we'll talk about, how communication and words invoke emotion. Mm-hmm. And then what happens is those emotions color our communications. Mm-hmm. because once we say something and it invokes a bunch of emotions, what we hear, what we see, all of that gets colored. And what we want to try to do is get us back to an objective space where we're not coloring information based upon how we feel about it.
Right. And I think too, like I say, even when we use the word boundaries, I think very few people actually use the words access. It's like everybody was so caught up on the word boundary.
Yeah.
But like you said, a lot of it, like you say, we all have boundaries, but part of the whole point of this conversation is about access and access control, and how much am I letting you in? How much am I dropping my boundaries? How much am I enlarging my boundaries? Because I'm either restricting access or giving access.
Yeah.
And so the whole goal, even when you're married, or even when you're dating, you're always trying to find ways to give access, to allow people to come in, to allow people to approach. Whenever you feel like you have to restrict access, is that somebody said something, you've seen some kind of behavior that now makes you, I like to call it the turtle. Now you feel like you got to
withdraw back into your shell.
Into your shell real quick because for some reason you don't feel safe.
Yeah.
There's something that's happening, like you said, that makes you want to draw back. And so the goal is to try to make it where there's access all the time.
Yeah.
Now there are always going to be different levels of access, but once again, what we try to do in any type of relationship, especially when it's growing, is you don't want to have the turtle effect.
Right.
You don't want to keep shrinking back, because to me that's a big red flag.
Yeah.
If I have to keep shrinking back on giving you access to something, then something's going wrong.
Right. And or my design around access is based upon some sort of trauma. So in order to protect my heart, I'm going to create these boundaries from my wife just because I'm afraid there's going to be hurt there. And it's like, well, and my philosophy, we need to change the vows to add, I promise to be the one that hurts you the most.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We need to include that, because once you decide to go down this journey with your forever person, that person's going to be the person that hurts you the absolute most.
Right.
Because they're the person you're most vulnerable to.
Yeah, and we don't say that to people who are on the road. Like I said, we probably need to say that more to our kids too. Because like you said, we create this fairy tale, like everything is going to be great. I think we even do that too, like when we come into Christianity, we create a fairy tale like, oh, everything's going to be great because the Lord is on my side. And the Lord is on my side, but I'm still going to have trials and tribulations.
Yeah.
So...
Well, let's get into some of the boundaries that we didn't cover last couple of weeks ago, and kind of walk through those and see how far we get, because this is a rich topic, and I think we can probably do 4 episodes on all of it.
We absolutely could.
So I'm going to start with some of my, sort of personal observations around boundaries. And there's, everyone understands explicit boundaries, right? Explicit boundaries are usually those things that says, thou shalt not cross here. You shall not do this. You shall not call me after 10 o'clock. It's thou shalt not, you must,
Yeah.
Very, very explicit. And I think we're often very good. Some of us are very good at articulating our boundaries. Don't touch my stuff.
He's saying that because that's exactly how he is. He's like, don't do this, don't do that. See, I'm more like the implicit person,
right.
But Andre's very explicit, which I think is good, because once again, I can't ever say that I didn't know. Right. That to me is why communication is so key when you're growing together. So people understand, okay, that's okay. That behavior is not okay.
What I will say to that, though, is it took time for me to realize that a lot of my boundaries was based on growing up as an almost only child, right? And so some of the boundaries were not healthy or realistic boundaries for a married relationship. So to the argument of those that saying, how can we become one with boundaries? That's exactly it. I have to do some self-examination and say, why do I say don't touch my stuff when it's our stuff? And me using phrases like my stuff after I get married just says that there's something embedded in me about how I view the relationship that I need to unwind so that things become our stuff, right? That these are our things. And when you really become spiritual, this is God's stuff, but we're not going to go.
That's true.
We're really not going to. That's you're super spiritual, right? You got your S on your chest. Right?
That is true.
Right. But no, it is. you lay out these boundaries and you have these explicit boundaries, we also really need to look and see what the source of those boundaries are. Those boundaries based in poor upbringing, in an issue that we experienced, in protection. I use this analogy that every experience we have, we craft a tool from that experience. Some of those tools are good tools, some are bad tools. But what happens is when we start to see things that look like that situation, we pull out that tool and we use that tool to deal with that situation. Well, unfortunately, even though that tool may have brought us success in the past, it does not make it a good tool.
Yeah.
And if my tool is to create boundaries where there's discomfort, the only thing I've done is taught myself to not deal with discomfort, or I've created this tool to manage discomfort rather than working through discomfort. That's what helps me become one, because we're going to have some discomfort moments.
We absolutely are, because now both of our boundaries are kind of like bumping up against each other. So it almost forces us to have a conversation about, okay, what's the in-between ground for both of us?
Yeah. And so then we move on to just talk about what is an implicit boundary. Implicit boundary. And it's, the root word is implied. I have not said it.
That's me.
There's a boundary there, and the other person may or may not know that it's there, right? But there are usually indicators after the boundary has been crossed.
Yeah.
you know, usually some sort of dissatisfaction, some sort of frustration, some sort of acting out, maybe even just a kind note saying, hey, please don't pick up my whatever anymore.
Right.
Right.
Right. I feel like he's always talking about
I'm not talking about you.
You know, like I said, I think we both have had implicit boundaries where we both have had to have those conversations. Like I remember when we first got married and we were arguing, and Andre got really mad, and then he just, this is when he just started using language that
I did not have a holy mouth, right?
Yeah,
it was not holy language, right?
And so for me, I was like, mid conversation, I was like, whoa, to me, that was a boundary that I was like, yeah, we can't cross that. I'm like, I can't communicate like that. I'm like, if we're I don't have a problem with us disagreeing, but we don't have to use that type of language.
Right. And when you're in the world, those types of words become periods and commas, right? Those are your fillers. Those are your points of emphasis. What do you blank mean? I can't say whatever the blank I want whenever I want it.
I was like, no, sir, I can't.
Right.
And
so
I can't do that.
Right.
My implicit boundary became an explicit boundary. I was like, that we're not going to start doing. And we haven't done that. We don't communicate with each other like that.
Yeah. And so, it's you have to learn, from those situations, because, it was an implicit boundary. But once again, it's not an unreasonable boundary, because really all you're saying is, look, I can't communicate with you that way. I'm not going to, it's hard for me to listen when it's clouded with all of this language.
Yeah.
And then it's hard for me to respond because I'm going to react emotionally to the word you're saying to me, and I can't even hear the context of what you're saying to me.
And the other part of the reality was I just don't know how to use colorful words like that. So I was like, this is already an unfair fight.
Right.
I don't even know how to get in like that. So I was like, I've already lost.
Unfortunately, this is not a pride moment, but I come from a very long lineage of people who are very what's the word in when you're fluent?
Yes, you were fluent
in the 4-letter word language, right? To conjugate many verbs and adjectives very creatively. And so not a point of pride, because we shouldn't have to. And what's funny is I don't attribute any of that to my father, because my father, one, I never heard him use that kind of language. Two, he's caught me when I was younger, and he says, you're more intelligent than that, right? Yeah. He always laid it out. Only people that aren't intelligent have to use that kind of a language to express themselves. So he would shame me into that. Now, I don't know how he hooked up with my mom, but I'm like, I don't know how that union was made.
I know. She was very colorful.
Yeah. She was very expressive.
Yeah, it's very expressive.
Yeah. Now y'all gonna unsubscribe because we got on the Safehouse talking about cussing.
Right. But you know what? That's just, let's not try to act like y'all don't have that in y'all house. Let's
right.
just,
or in your families, right?
Come
We
on
all
now.
got uncle or auntie or somebody.
Yeah,
that
somebody
don't.
gonna be colorful.
Yeah. So,
But once again, like you said, the reason why we talk about it is because, once again, if you don't talk about it, then those explicit boundaries and implicit boundaries can become toxic.
yeah, they can.
If you're not having conversations about what you like and what you don't like. To me, those explicit and implicit boundaries is like setting the ground rules.
Yeah, they
for
are.
how you want your relationship to go.
And one thing about implicit boundaries, if you're a person with them, the only thing I would caution you is just be careful with your expectations around people understanding them,
Yeah,
because they
that's
may not
good.
even know that they're there. And what you will find is, usually folks with implicit boundaries tend to be more on the feeler end of the gauge, right? They're very intuitive, right? You should know what I mean. You should know what I expect.
Yeah.
Therefore, you should know what the boundaries are. It's just natural. It's common sense. I say this phrase over and over again to the point of cliche. Common sense is not common practice.
It's definitely
it's
not.
not.
Yeah.
And one of the worst places you can be is the unsaid, unmet expectation. And that's what an implicit boundary is. It's unsaid. And when it is unmet, it creates frustration.
Yeah.
And so, you really want to get to a place where, hey, we're able to discuss these things out loud, just because, once again, we want to have a baseline of behavior. 2, you save yourself the frustration of this thing, this expectation you got that's not being met, that you never even agreed about.
Yeah.
3, you don't even know if the person can keep that boundary.
That's
right?
true.
So if you're with a person, if your forever person is a touchy-feely hand holder, right? And that's just the way they are. They need to touch. They just need that, right? If this person is your forever person, well, that implicit boundary of having personal space, that's going to have to come down.
Yeah.
That's going to have to change. And while that other person should understand that that's something you're working through, there should also be a portion of you that says, if my forever person is a touchy-feely person, I need to deal with that, because I have massive discomfort there. So.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. Because once again, like you said, you knew that it's so funny. Sometimes I think when we get married, we forget who we were dating.
Yeah.
Now you knew the person was touchy-feely when you were dating them, and you were okay, them touching and feeling you and doing all this other kind of stuff, wanting to hold your hand,
right,
and all these different things. And then all of a sudden now we married, and now you like, get away from me, sit on your side of the couch. Right. It's like, but you knew that about me.
Right. We held hands all while we were dating.
We did.
Right. And so, but once again, I think that's part of the transparency exercise.
Yeah, that is. It's a big part of the transparency exercise.
Yeah. So while we're going into our next boundary, I want you to comment below about explicit and implicit boundaries. Do you think you have them? What do you think about them? Have you experienced them? Do they frustrate you? Are you dealing with some? So just tell us what you think in the comments below.
Before we transition to the next one, I always feel like too, when you're married, that's when you really have to talk about the explicit boundaries, because they change.
They do.
Because now we're married and I have brothers and sisters, you have family. And so now, like you said, now we have to put up these boundaries with our families. And so you have to be able to talk about, okay, what does that look like? Can my family come over unannounced?
Right.
No.
Or yes, depending upon your house, right?
Depending
upon your house.
But both of you have to be able to talk about it. And sometimes, like I said, it's if you don't talk about it, it becomes an implicit boundary when the person comes over.
Yeah.
And now the other spouse is mad. Be like, well, why did your people not call? What are we doing? It's like, well, I didn't know that was a thing.
Right.
Because that's the thing I think about implicit. You don't know it's a thing until it's a thing.
Yeah. And what you have is one person frustrated because they think, well, it's common sense. People don't just show up at the house when they want. Well, in my family, we all show up at everybody's house whenever we want, right? And you got the bringing together of two cultures.
Yeah.
And those really, cultural boundaries, we'll talk about that. But when you're bringing together two cultures, there could be a lot of implicit boundaries because we've lived this way forever.
Pretty
right?
much my whole life. Yeah.
And so, those are things we need to discuss.
Yeah. So now we're going to move on over into sexual boundaries.
Sexual boundaries. Now, what's really funny is sexual
I had
boundaries.
to say it like
you
that.
had to do
I felt
it.
like I don't know.
You know,
Andre say I got stuff going on in my mind.
she's extra. She is absolutely extra.
It just makes me giggle.
Extra.
I don't know.
every little phrase she's pulling out. She's like a 11-year-old
Right.
kid. You know,
Right.
you know how like a 9-year-old boy finds like the innuendo in everything.
Right, I
That
do.
that is her. Right. It's
I
like
do.
I'll say something and she'll start giggling. I'm like, oh, she done figured out something nasty about that. So.
Oh, golly.
So all you brothers out there that think that ain't no hope for your wife becoming absolutely nasty, it just turn 50 something. And it's gonna happen.
Right. I feel
Right.
like that was when I kind of like, I had a lot of sexual boundaries before.
Yeah.
But like I said, now it's like, oh, okay, well, let's go, sir. Like, you know.
But you know, that's a good segue point because, you know, you have within the umbrella of sexual boundaries, you have implicit and explicit boundaries,
Yeah.
right? You have some people that are like, thou shalt not touch me there, or
Right.
you know, we can't do that, or
And I think what's really good about this part of the conversation is because, you know, the Bible says, well, the bedroom was undefiled. Yeah, but I still don't want to do all of that.
right.
So we
Or-
still got to talk about, you're right, the bedroom is undefiled, but we still have to talk about, like you said, what makes me feel comfortable and what makes me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, because you may have a traumatized person,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, the bedroom is undefiled, but I know if we do that, it brings back images of what happened to me,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It becomes vivid, right? To the point where now we're in a moment where we're supposed to be the closest that we're ever close,
Yeah.
right? But yet I'm not close to you because I'm reliving some negative experience,
Yeah.
during this whole thing. And that has to be really, really acknowledged. And that's not a just get over it. And that's just not a, hey, we're married now, you need to figure that out. That's something that needs to be worked through.
That is true. And, the other thing too about sexual boundaries is, the people who are a little bit more seasoned, as we get older,
Yeah.
once upon a time we could kind of like swing
Yeah.
the rafters.
Right,
Now
right.
we're a
Right,
little bit
right.
older.
Yeah, then-
one wrong swing and now I got a cramp.
Yeah. The night's over, right? It's just there's some
Our bodies become our own boundaries.
right. There's some things that are just there's no
Right.
recovery
Like,
from,
yeah,
right?
That's not going to happen.
Now, what's funny though is that we can create a boundary of expectation because I think as we've gotten older and mishaps happen, the
Yes.
boundary
We've
that
had
used to be
plenty.
there was, I need to be a Greek god here. I need to, but then
You
it
still are.
yeah, right. But it becomes a joke, right? It's funny, right? It's just like, oh, that didn't work. It's like,
Yeah.
and you wind up laughing and joking about it. It's like, oh yeah, that used to happen when we was 20 or whatever. It's
Right.
like, no, not anymore,
Right.
And it becomes a point of softness, and it becomes a laughing moment,
Yeah.
right? And it creates better intimacy because
It does.
now we can both sort of relax in our own foul ups, or
Right.
we can, there's no pressure, right? Which creates a more open
Oh
environment.
yeah, absolutely. And also too, I was going to say, as we get older, like I said, our bodies just change. Like I said, I think one of the biggest things that we had to discuss was when I started going through menopause, and what you thought was me just kind of never wanting to do it and kind of pushing you away was, I was like, no, I'm still not even understanding everything that's going on with me, like going through menopause and what that looked like with this big hormonal change.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just remember saying to you, I'm like, okay, because Andre's a fact person. He'll say that all the time. So I had to tell him, I'm like, no, dude, go read up on menopause.
Mm-hmm.
I said, this has I love you. I still want to be able to be intimate with you. I said, but it's just my hormones. I literally don't feel like it.
Right.
But like you said, but if we're not having those conversations, then my behavior can make it seem like, okay, yeah, I just don't want to be bothered with you. And now you're asking me, well, what's wrong with you? I can't even really explain it. And let's be honest, menopause is just hard to explain.
It is, but
It is.
it's not hard to explain. It is,
Yeah.
right? And you're not the only
Yeah.
woman to have dealt with it.
Yeah.
You won't be the last, and it's a thing, right?
Yeah.
So you can read up on it. You can read up on the side effects, read up in the impacts. It's a real thing. So, for those of us that take that kind of thing personally, we need to step back from that, right? Because no, there's real change that
Right.
occurs there. And then so now what happens is now we have to respect the boundary of change,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
So
can you say that one again?
while
Yeah.
you're going through this change, there's a boundary there,
Yeah.
right? And it's not a boundary that's designed to keep you out. It's a boundary that's designed to keep me from pressing into a place
Yeah.
while you're still working through the
Yeah.
change, right?
That's so good. I mean, like I said, we're probably gonna say some more good stuff in here, but that's so good. Like you said, that it's giving you the room to process while you're going through it. Because like I said, sometimes like I said, when we take offense by boundaries, it's like that would be the reason not to be offended
Yeah.
by that.
Yeah, yeah, but it's hard because we take it personal.
Yeah, we do. We take
And
it
so
personal. Yeah.
once again, even when we went through issues of that, it's like at first I had to step back and look at myself and say, okay, this is a medical thing. It's hormonal. What in you is causing you to process this as something that's personally against you? Well, I have some rejection trauma and some self-esteem trauma, right? And so my mind tends to gravitate towards things that feed that trauma. So if I experience something, here's just another case of what you experienced in your life. No, it's not. That's you attaching this situation to that, right? And it's not really that. And that's what I mean by your experiences, your traumas, these other things can color how you gather information, right? So I've already put a color on this that may be, but it's just enhancing what she really wants. It's like, no, that's not the case, And I know it's not the case now because now you're chasing me around the house. But
Now he's running.
Yeah. And now I need the boundary of change, right? Because it's like I'm an old man now.
Right.
And I need to take my vitamins. No.
I love it personally because I'm like, this is a switch, And so once again, to your point though, I can't take it personally,
right?
Because once again, it's a change for you because that's something that I wasn't used to. I'm, like I said, we had to have this whole conversation about. Men aren't always just ready to go. And in my mind, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like, men are always ready to go. And he's like, no.
Yeah. Through my teens and through 20s, absolutely. Right.
Yes.
At 50, takes a little bit more to start the engine. Right. And, once you get it running, it's only got so much gas. Right.
Yeah.
But no.
But what I do want to say to the ladies is this, like you said, whenever you feel like you do have a sexual boundary up, like I said, you still have to figure out how to work through that. Because like even with menopause, like you said, I never used it as a reason to not want to be intimate. You know what I mean? Because sometimes we're like, oh, well, you know what? This is how I'm feeling and I don't even need it anyway. So I'm not even going to try to get back there. No, wrong answer. That's, now that sexual boundary because the way your body is going, now it becomes a toxic boundary because now you're not even trying to do anything to now to come back to that space of intimacy, because sometimes what we do is, like you said, we don't want to hold hands, we don't want to kiss, we don't want to have no levels of affection, and so we have to really fight to get back to those places, of that level of intimacy, instead of using it as a reason to be like, okay, this is my way out. My headache thing wasn't working, so now I'm just gonna use this.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because we use the situation as a pretext and an excuse.
Yeah.
When really there was feelings before the situation
Absolutely,
manifested
yeah.
itself. Now this is just a rationale that lets me out.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what happens when the situation is over?
Yeah.
Right. So now we're going to continue this facade, or are we going to deal with the real reasons with why I don't want to be intimate? Because that's separate from the situation.
It is very separate.
So now we got a boundary, because the boundary is I'm not going to let us deal with why I don't want to be intimate anymore, right? That's not going to be a point of discussion. That's not going to be a point of how do we work together to fix it? A boundary could be I turn it into a point of blame.
Yeah.
Rather than, okay, something we need to work through, right? Or we turn it into, a point of we just ain't going to talk about it. We're going to go along, get along. And the next thing you know, everybody's got other interests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think like even with the sexual boundary, we can just call it like intimacy.
Intimacy boundaries, yeah.
Because like you said, a lot of times, like I said, we just use the word sexual when really it's really intimacy boundaries. And I think a lot of couples, like you said, we find ourselves in those spaces. Well, like you said, we're not even holding hands anymore. We can't even have intimate conversation. And when I say intimate conversation, I'm just saying that, sometimes our conversations is, hey, how was your day? And that was it. You don't. Intimate conversation says that you know exactly what's going on with me. And so if we're unable to have intimate conversations about what's going on with each other, then somewhere there's a gate up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we have to be able to figure out, like you said, we 30 years in.
Yeah.
I feel like we could talk about anything.
Yeah.
Now laugh about stuff that would make us mad when we first got married. We can laugh about it.
And more importantly, our toolkit is so when those things come up that we haven't dealt with, we have a better toolkit to deal with it, right? So if there's something that comes up that's challenging, it's just like, okay, well, let's talk through that, right? Let's work through that. Whereas before it would be offense, it would be caught off guard, it would take it personally. There's all these things that would come into play, and I think 30 years just said, wait a minute, just everybody pause. And let's really talk through this,
And I think too, the longer we've been married, I'll say for me, I probably understand more when I'm getting ready to put a boundary in place, especially one that probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And so I now have to step back and say, okay, let me figure out how not to put a gate up.
Yeah.
How not to put a fence up, how not to place myself in a space of isolation. And so when I say isolation, that means I'm not going to let you access that part of me. And so remember what we said in the beginning, boundaries, we should be making sure that there are these access points in boundaries. And if I'm restricting access, then that is my moment to now step back and say, okay, should I be restricting access? Why am I restricting access? And then if I can answer those two questions, as my next question should be, okay, now how do I give access back?
Yeah, yeah. And men, we're not off the hook here, right? Because I've even experienced this, right? So for men, and I'm more of a facts person, so I'm speaking more in third person. This is what I've observed about my brothers that may be on the feeling side of the spectrum, right? That are more intuitive, right? That move more with their gut, right? And try to pick up cues and signals. What tends to happen is in those conversations, the shutdown occurs, and then in the attempt to communicate, it gets worse because I'm not responding to what you're saying to me on how to resolve the problem. I'm responding to how I've colored what you're saying, right? I'm responding to the emotion I feel. I'm responding to the person that I think you are, and I'm not listening to the actual words that are coming out of your mouth. So then I attempt to resolve the problem through my own interpretation.
Yeah.
And not what you've asked me to do. And so it tends to worsen.
Yeah.
So brothers, those of us that are on, and it's ladies too, anybody that's more of an intuitive thinker or a more intuitive person, a gut person, when you start to listen, just make sure that you understand that you may be coloring what that person says with who you think they are. And you're responding not to what they said, but how you feel about what you think they said. So you're actually 2 or 3 layers removed from what they actually said.
Yeah.
A good test of that, if you're finding that when you're in these discussions or you're working these things out, the person says, well, you never did what I asked. And in your mind, I did exactly what you asked. No, you did an interpretation of what you thought I asked.
And I think that's important, like you said, in the intimacy / sexual boundaries, because like you said, when you're communicating about what you like, what you don't like, what you can do and what you can't do, like you said, for whatever reason, like you said, making sure that you're listening.
Yeah.
I remember, like I said, we would always have conversations about. You would always ask me, like, what do I like, or do I really know what you like? And once again, I didn't even know how to navigate those types of conversations, because you were always like, well, I'm always, trying to figure out what you like and what you don't like, and, bringing something new to the table. And so that type of question would always catch me off guard, because I never really knew, like, I never felt like I was going to have a right answer.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, I just started asking you. And so then, even when I would try stuff, I'm thinking about one instance in particular. He was like, no, that definitely doesn't work.
Yeah. But that's good, because what happens though is if we have trauma about failure, we'll try something, and if it doesn't work, then we'll throw in the towel. We ain't never trying nothing else again, right? It's just like, well, no. Go back to the book and pull something else out,
and
right?
I do have trauma about failure.
Yeah.
So I had to, like, really work through that place and be like, okay, well, I'm not going to try nothing else again.
Right.
But what I love is that even in that moment, you said, it's okay. That didn't work. You said, let's just try something new. Don't give up. Just keep trying new stuff. I'm gonna like something.
I'm gonna like yeah. We got a whole lifetime to figure this out, right?
Exactly.
So if you like, we only on page 2. We got 100 more pages to go, right? Pull out, let's go to page 3 and see what's on that page.
Exactly.
Get out of whirl. If don't work, okay.
Yeah.
But it's like, oh, okay, I like page 5. We're gonna do that for a while. But once again, this is kind of weird. But it is a place where you have to sort of deal with that communication and break down that boundary so that now we can actually talk through. Because you can have a boundary on just the whole process of talking through.
Exactly. And so, like I said, I know you're thinking, well, this is weird, but I feel like couples need to hear this part, because I think sometimes this is where we get stuck. I know I was stuck for a while until I felt like, okay, you know what, it's safe for me to be able to have this conversation. Why? Because it's not only beneficial for me, but it's beneficial for you. Because if we have a healthy sex life, then that's healthy. And that's what I want. I wanted us to be able to have that. So anything that was blocking that, I had to figure out how to knock that down.
And to show you how comfortable she is, she's on a YouTube channel that will go out to millions of people.
What am I doing?
Talking about her own sex life.
Oh
this
my
is how
God.
far she's gone, right? It just hit her right now. Like, oh my God, a lot of people can see this, including your dad. Your dad can see this.
Okay, on that note, we're about to shut it all down. We have talked about 3 boundaries. We're going to talk about the other 3 in the next episode, because I have gone too far. You know what? I have gone, but that shows, once again, the growth.
Yeah.
And like I said, and I think it shows in how happy we are, like you said, being married for 30 years, that's not a point of frustration for us.
Yeah. It's a point of growth.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
It took time to get there. And hopefully for you all out there that are watching, listening, I hope this serves as a catalyst.
Yeah.
That it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be that uptight.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have to be that reserved. It doesn't have to be perfect. And as a matter of fact, if you go through this process of your forever person, you're like, hey, we're going to get there in iterations, right? We're going to be becoming for the rest of our lives. Right. And
I like that. Yeah, we are. We're as long as we're here and we're forever, like you said, we're constantly becoming.
Yeah, we're constantly becoming. So that gives us the license to try it, mess up, try again, come back to the table. We're gonna try again. We just keep on trying. Oh boy,
Andre's like, no.
There she is with
we're not trying anything tonight.
I'm not saying no. I did not say the. The word says your body belongs to your spouse. All right. So that's all we got for y'all this time, Safehouse. We hope you enjoyed the episode. Please share, subscribe, hit the bell. Give us some commentary. The algorithm loves when people comment on the video. So please give us some feedback. We know a lot of you have been reaching out to us on the side. We understand that this is sensitive stuff, and everybody doesn't want their comment in the ether on the internet.
We don't mind sharing our stuff.
Yeah,
That's what we're here for.
We get it. So, but for those of you that are braver, that would love to see the channel grow, please start to comment. Please share it with your friends, those that you think maybe find this information useful. Ministries, whether they're friends or you have marriage, life groups or ministries that may benefit from some of this content, make sure you share it. And until the next time.
Until the next time.
We love you all.
We love you guys.
Peace.